You know, we're a hospital, not a courtroom. You ever felt like you need to grab the gavel?
Oh, yeah. Just recently, kind of. I think I said to somebody yesterday, I want to turn my stethoscope into a gavel and beat some people with it.
I've asked Susan Hickman to be with me because I want to ask her some questions and get her opinion about lots of things. Susan's worked at Suncoast for a long time and heads up a lot of areas of giving away materials and our ministry partners. So, Susan, today I want to ask some questions. What happens when we help someone and we really maybe help them too much? Have we ever done that?
Unfortunately, probably. I feel like, as an organization, we read the book Toxic Charity, and I thought that was just such an eye-opening thing for me but how you help people without enabling them. One of the things that I'm very conscious of is that we are using other people's money. So I do kind of feel like Robin Hood.
Right.
I'm taking from the people that have it, but I want to be really careful about where we put it. And we do want to give a hand up, not a handout.
Right.
And that's always really important to us. But have I been guilty of probably helping somebody too much? Occasionally.
Yeah.
But I would rather err on the side of that than not help at all sometimes.
Right.
But again, we have boundaries,
Right.
and it's really hard for us to say no.
So Brene Brown has a lot of stuff to say about boundaries.
Yes.
And what does she say? Do you remember?
She says it helps with our empathy.
Right.
That we're coming alongside somebody and feeling what they're feeling instead of building up resentments. When you don't have boundaries, then you let somebody walk all over you. Pretty soon that hardens you and turns you into somebody you don't want to be.
Right.
You want to keep your compassion. And the way to do that is through boundaries.
Yeah, you could actually take an entire benevolent budget on one needy family and not be able to help
easily.
anyone for the rest of the year.
Right.
So, but we do a lot of giveaways, a lot of different benevolent stuff.
Oh, I gave away like 5 cars in the last 2 weeks. It's my favorite part of my job. And the young lady that came and got her car yesterday, she's like, "Can I give you a hug?" I'm like, "Yes." That's what we will take, hugs for payment.
Why do we give away cars?
That's the ultimate of a hand up. One lady that we gave a car, also through empowerment, she had to take 4 buses every day in order to get her daughter to daycare and herself to work and reverse the situation. And it was not only, costing her money or whatever, but it was just the time that took and doing that with a 2-year-old. And she did have a job. She was working hard. She just couldn't get it together enough to get a car.
Right.
And so by giving her that car, it changed her life. And it wasn't somebody that, was going to abuse that gift.
Right.
And just keeping in touch with her through her mentor, we know that she's doing good, that
Right.
she's doing well with that.
So most of the cars we give away are just, they're not brand new cars, but they're just good used cars.
I call them point A to point B cars.
I see.
And
If you're Ubering, it's a benefit.
it's such a benefit. And so that is the main reason that we do it. And because people donate them to us, which is amazing. I loved the Mustang giveaway. Of course, the Blaze of Hope auctioned off this car, and it was a Suncoaster won the car and then donated it back to us. So we were able to gift it to someone. Wow. And that's such a blessing for that family. They've had one car for so many years and 2 small children and having to get where they need to go. And so it was a blessing for them to be able to do school and work and do what they need to do.
So let me ask you a question. When someone says, well, they just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, what do you think?
First, they need boots. And so we're here to help provide the boots.
And we live in a community that needs to get around, to get to jobs and daycare and other things. We're not like New York with transit systems.
Right.
I mean, we do have a scat bus, but come on, that's really
People have called the office wanting to come to church, but SCAT doesn't come all the way out here.
right.
So even get to church, people.
So how many cars have we given away this year, do you think?
I think for the last 3 years, we've given away 20 cars every year, and I think we've already met that this year. And we've got a few months to go.
We give a lot of things away, but what happens when we become judgmental, or when do we do that?
I think it's kind of in our nature to judge a little bit, but I think there's also a difference between judging and being judgmental. I feel like it's thinking you're better than somebody. You know, another thing that Brene Brown said that I really like is it's better for you if you assume everybody's doing the best they can.
Right.
And, you know, sometimes you may not think they are, but most of the time I think people are, and they're making decisions with the information they have at the time. Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of said that like as I was raising my kids, it's like, oh, that was kind of a bad choice that I made there, but I was making it with the tools I had on me.
So you think we are judgmental, or do you think we choose to be judgmental?
I think some people choose to be judgmental. I think they have, you know, going along with what we talked about last week with beliefs, they believe people should act a certain way. They believe people should believe a certain way.
Right.
And when they don't, there's something wrong with them. When they don't believe like you or act like you, that people tend to think there's something not right.
So can people choose not to be judgmental?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think they really can. I think working under that assumption that they're doing the best they can.
So can we do things that really change people?
I don't think we can change people. I think we can help people in their endeavor to change. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
You can tell people all day long they need to stop doing something, or you can tell people all day long they need to do, but until they feel they need to make that change, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
But when they do decide to make that change, more than anything, we can get behind them and help them with that. And so I think that's where we come in as a church. Yeah. We're on your team. We're your cheerleader. We're standing behind you, and we'll help you in any way we can.
Right. And we need to help people make choices that are good for them.
Yes.
But they have to come up with their own choice, and they have to make their own decisions. I think that's important. So let me shift gears for a minute.
Okay.
And let me ask you another question.
Okay.
Is being gay an issue at Suncoast? Is it wrong?
No. I had a friend say, "Oh, do you let gay people go to your church?" And I said, "We don't let anybody go to our church. We welcome people to come to our church." And that is not a concern. Again, it's back to judging. It's not ours to judge.
Can you be gay and be a Christian?
Yes. Yes, you can. You can follow the teachings of Christ. You can live a Christ-like life. You love people. Love's love. Is love is love is love.
Do you think that when people come in, they're gay, that we should try to fix them?
No, that's terrible. I think, you know, there used to be I don't know, maybe there still is the deprogramming things that I just think that would be so hurtful and so just much more damaging. I had a very good friend that after I got out of college, I lived with him in New Orleans, and my biggest complaint was all his dates were better looking than mine. But he did not choose that lifestyle. His parents disowned him, and he didn't talk to his brothers. And I think if that was really a choice, he wouldn't have made it. Because it was hurtful for him. They've all since come around and are a close family now, and that makes me very happy. But I don't think it's a choice, and I don't think people should be judged on that.
But it seems like in the previous days, decades maybe, that people would be pretty judgmental about that until one of their family members found themselves in that, and they were immediately educated. Their eyes were opened. And their whole stance began to change, because it's not someone out there, it's someone in here.
It's a prejudice. And I think people are afraid of it. And I think it's just like people of different races or anything, it's the same thing. It's until it has a face that you know, it makes it very different.
So let me ask one more question. What about women at Suncoast? Are we a male-dominant organization, or do we allow women to take leadership roles?
Oh, why, yes, you do. As a matter of fact, we outnumber y'all on the leadership team.
I need to think about that.
I know, you really
Yeah.
should. You should probably get
So
some more
what's the number?
testosterone in that room. Let's see, there's 6 of us, and 4 of us are women. Yeah.
And 2
Sorry
of us are
about
guys.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that happen? I mean,
I don't know. Hey, we stayed around.
yeah.
That's right. We're the most loyal. That's why.
And I have a saying. I say, ministry is very relational, and typically, not universally, but typically, women are a little more relational than men, and that's why I really like to hire women to work within the church. And you and Susan, you and Sherry have both been here for a long time.
Yeah.
You've been here.
Becky's been here a while too.
Yeah, she's been here since the beginning. Yeah. Yeah, we have lots that have been here a long time, but it's the loyalty factor and the fact that we just like to put the best people in the best positions possible to do the greater work, and that's why we're grateful for our senior leadership team.
We care so much about this community,
Yeah.
not just the Suncoast community, but the community in general. And that's what's really, I tell people all the time, I love my job. I love helping people, and you enable me to do that. And it just makes me so happy.
Yeah, yeah. It used to be my job,
I
what
know.
you get to do.
I know.
And now, if you don't know, Susan gets to give back to the community. So she is really the person that all the cars go through, and
People have tried to go over my head
I know.
to you and Sherry.
and we just kick them back to you.
I know, and it's so fun.
Thank you, Susan, for the time you spent here today. Your answers have been marvelous. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you today. Thank you so much for being here. Also, thanks for tuning in around on the internet. But we appreciate this series, and it's called AMA Ask Me Anything. And what we're trying to do is answer the questions that you guys have been asking. So we have about 80 questions that have come in, and we're dealing with 2 or 3 a week. So we'll sum them up the last week, but we got a few more weeks to go, but not many more. But today is week 3. The first week we had the opportunity to talk about what we believe, and we think that was a very important part. And we had a great conversation last week. But today I want to hone in on the questions about others. And here's the first question, and Susan does a great job answering some of these questions, but I want to reiterate on a few of them myself. The first question is Suncoast accepting of gay or homosexual Christian relationships? And I want to say lots of churches are not, but we are not one of those churches. My answer is yes, we accept everyone. So people say, well, that's interesting. I say, yeah, but let me explain to you my focus on Jesus. Jesus continually reached out to those who are not necessarily like everyone else. We call those the marginalized in society. He reached out to the woman who was caught in adultery. She was supposed to be stoned because of the law. And he said, hey, let him who's without sin cast the first stone. Then another group was lepers. They were supposed to, they had a sickness or a disease, or just a flesh disease, but because they were afraid of the contagious part of that disease, they were to be kept at bay. Keep them away from us. And they were supposed to shout when they got close, unclean, unclean. But Jesus touched the leper. Well, those would not get close. He allowed a woman with a bleeding disorder who was considered unclean to touch the hem of his garment. Jesus was never exclusive, always inclusive. And one of the things we've said at Suncoast for many years, always inclusive, never exclusive. Jesus reached out to the Romans. He reached to the woman the Samaritan woman, to the Gentiles. What he really came to do is to show us his love for all of humanity. And I think sometimes the church has become so judgmental. We try to dictate sins. We're too judgmental when we condemn lifestyles, social groups, and they really are prejudices. So let me sum up the biblical message. We have basically one job. Larry, you have basically one job. What is it? To fix others? No, that's not it. To judge others? No, that's not it. To condemn others? How about to exclude others? No, Larry, you only have one job. What is that? Love others. Isn't it amazing? It's not that complicated. Although I struggle with it every week. You say, well, how's that? Well, I drive. I drive. There was something this week in front of me at a light, and the light went green, and there was 5 empty spaces where everyone was gone. And I was in one of the church vehicles, and I beeped the horn. It just has a little beep. It's kind of a soft horn. I don't know who did that. But I beeped it again and again, and finally, I literally just pushed the horn down, and it beeped for 10 solid seconds before this lady finally woke up from her coma of texting, and she drove up to the light and stopped as the light turned red. And I said, Larry, you only have one job. Just one job. I'm tested every week. But the second question, do we allow women in leadership? You've already heard that. We have 6 on our leadership team. We have many staff, but in the leadership team, there's 4 ladies. You say, how does that work? Very well. I would tell you that not always, but generally speaking, women are more social or more relational than men. And this is very much a relational community. Why would we put guys who don't like to talk to each other in a relational circle? I mean, you say, well, are all guys that way? No, I'm not that way. And some of you, I look at it, you know who you are, you talkers. But you also know who you are. You guys that said, well, I don't talk. Then this is probably not your best, probably not your best job. And the other question, would we allow a woman to preach? I want to answer this by saying, I'm married. So, fair enough. I grew up in the Church of the Nazarene that had women preachers. Women preachers have never been an issue for me. So if it's an issue for you, it really should not be. I mean, if you want to go back biblically, Deborah in the book of Judges was one of the judges in the Old Testament. That means she was above everyone else. And if women can't be in leadership, that's just it's a damaging thing that's been said, and it should never be said, and it's really does not reflect the Spirit of Christ. So do we allow women in leadership? Absolutely. Not just yes, but absolutely. There's another question. This is a little longer. How do we maintain a friendship when we're trying to evolve into a better person, live a Christ-like life, but our friends are stuck in old ways, making bad decisions, and sometimes draw us down? When I was in high school, I had a friend. His name was Terry McGuire. Terry McGuire was a bad influence on me. Terry, I hope you're watching this today. My mother told me that she did not want me to hang around with Terry McGuire because he's a bad influence. I'd go to Terry's house, and Terry's mom would say, thank you so much for hanging around Terry. You're a good influence on him. Which is it? Both. I did things I probably wouldn't have done because I was with Terry. And I kept him from doing some things that would have made him worse. So, but what about friends who drag us down? What if I were to suggest to you, only make friends who will lift you up. Never make a friend who will drag you down. Then the friends who you made because they're picking you up, they would say, they'd have to say, well, I'm sorry, but I have to drop you because you're dragging me down. At some point, it was probably not the right question, but I think it'd be better the real question would be, how do we become friends? How do we become friends who lift others up? That's a good question. Sometimes we need to let our friends know, those who would drag us down, I'm just not going to go there. I've said that before with old friends. I said, guys, I'm just not going to go there. Maybe when I was a kid I did that, younger, but I prefer to talk about something else. And it's a dismissal of some of the stuff that's too coarse, too base, and I just don't really want to go there. Fair enough? But sometimes you just make a statement. So another question that you've asked, because we talk about this a lot, and here's the question, what is toxic charity that Suncoast talks a lot about? Toxic charity is when we help someone and they get so used to us helping them that they don't remember how to do for themselves. That's toxic. When you help them to where they become a dependent, that's toxic. When we remove all the struggle from life, it's toxic. When I was in college, my parents could not afford to send me to college. I went on my own, and I had to work my way through, and I had 2 jobs. I got up at 2:30 in the morning for my first job, and I sorted mail for a big mail company, a big shoe company in Nashville. And I'd go, so from 2:30 to 7:30 I worked, then from 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock was school, and then from 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock I worked as a forklift operator for a warehouse. And then I get back in the campus at like 9:30. You know, I'm 18 years old. I got to socialize a little. So I'd socialize and, you know, try to meet the girls I need to meet and just have fun. And I'd go to bed by 11 and get back, have to be back at work at 2:30. I did not get enough sleep. I would drive my car and pull up to a red light and fall asleep at the red light. And somebody, some obnoxious person, would beep their horn at me. And I would yell at him, look, you just have one job. But I mean, I look back on those days, and it was a struggle. But you know, I learned a lot of things through the struggle. And we take all the struggle out of life, a lot of the learning we will not find. Some of you understand what I'm talking about. You've struggled to get where you are. Sometimes it's not been the shortcut. You've taken the long way, but you understand it's worked for you. Looking back, life could have been easier, but the lessons that come from the struggle would not have been part of who you are. See, when we do not help others, we do not help others when we take all the struggle out of life. Our help sometimes can be toxic. So what do we do about that? When someone says, I want you to help me, and you have the resource, why would you ever say no? Susan, speaking of Brene Brown, she's a PhD in research, psychology, and also a master in social work, but she's an author, and she writes some good stuff, a lot on YouTube, but this is one of the things she says about others. She said, never lose your compassion for people, but always have good boundaries. And the study she mentions shows that the most compassionate people in the world, the people who help people the most, are the ones with the strongest boundaries. You cannot say yes every time. You have to say no sometimes, or yes, but. And some of the people who really are the most gracious, generous people in the world have learned to say no. Do you know, at Suncoast, we say yes a lot, but we say no a lot too. Everything with us is not always a yes. Why? Because we're trying to help people. You could wipe out your entire benevolent budget with one person who says, well, I need a new car, I need to do this, I need that, and we say yes, yes, yes. The next thing you know, the next 100 people get nothing because everything has gone to this one person. Sometimes we help a little, but we want you to help yourself some as well. Which leads me to this next thing. I heard this week. The favorite toy of a child that even the youngest child can operate is a grandparent. Did you get that? That's me. See, I think it's okay to tell your kids no, but grandkids, that's a different story. Our daughters, you know, Laura was on stage today, and Stacy's on stage often too. Our daughters taught their children, my grandchildren, a method of going to sleep. They would talk to their children, walk them in their room, tuck them in, have a little prayer time, whatever they did, and then they would say goodnight. They'd walk out and shut the door and let my grandchildren cry. Horrible. Those kids, when they come to sleep over at my house, they want to go to bed at 7:30 and they wake up at 7. Whoa, it's a great thing. Can you imagine these sleepers? Now let me tell you how we did it. Becky and I decided that we would take our kids in, we'd rock them, and we'd rock them to sleep. And they'd walk over and put them in the crib. And then I would walk 2 steps toward the door, my knee would snap, crackle, pop. I had that Rice Krispie disease. And they'd start crying. I'd go back and pick the baby up, and I'd rock her again. Then I'd put her back in, then I'd rock her again. And I didn't get any sleep, and they didn't get much sleep because every time they cried, we'd be in and check on them. But my daughters taught their kids to sleep all night. And you know what she calls that? They need to learn to self-soothe. What does that mean? They have a little blanket, or, I have one granddaughter, she has her wrist up here, and she kind of sucks on her wrist like it's a pacifier. I thought, that's just creepy. But they sleep through the night. You know what toxic charity is when people become so dependent, they do not know how to self-soothe. They don't know how to take care of their own issues because we've always taken care of it for them. That is what we mean by toxic charity. We want to help as many people as possible, but we don't like to enable them because it doesn't help them. Which leads to the next question. This is like a big question. How can forgiveness resolve world crisis? I need to answer this question. I don't know. I mean, a world crisis, I don't know, but I can help you with some more immediate crisis. A more immediate crisis was when our friends turn into enemies because we have different religious doctrines. You believe that, you need to be stoned or burned at the stake. Sometimes we've not even evolved beyond that. Or when our friends turn into enemies because politically we're on the left or the right, and there seems to be very few in the middle today, and they throw stones at each other. And there are some people today that family members are not talking to each other because they voted for Trump and they voted for Hillary last election. And they just can't see this, we just can't be friends. I think it's too sad. Forgiveness is a process. If someone has wronged us or offended us, the first step to make someone understand why, or help us understand why someone thinks the way they do. See, ideas or beliefs make sense to the person who hold it. Try to see it from their perspective. You know what I think? That if you and I disagree on something, then you just haven't heard me talk enough. I just need to explain it a little bit more. I'll explain a little bit more. I can't believe that once I give full explanation, anyone would not agree with me 100%. If you disagree, it's just because I haven't explained myself well. And truthfully, many times that resolves a lot of arguments in the home. Walk in their shoes. Past experiences help us understand who they are. Listen to their views. I love this statement. When someone, I go, really, I just don't understand. It's a good place to begin. The more we understand, we begin to understand someone different, the better our response. So, another question. What can we do to change people? That's a great question, by the way, whoever submitted this. And I need to say, I don't think we're supposed to change people. I don't think we can change people. You know why? Because we just can barely change ourselves, right? I'm going to start January 1st with a new exercise regime. Why? Because I got too fat. I'm going to have a new diet. Why? Because I'm just not fit. I'm going to have a whole new regime for myself. And how's that work for you? Not very good, but I'm going to change someone else. You see the problem there? I can't even work with me. I think it's kind of silly. But most changes that we do make take time. They're in small steps, not large steps. So here's my quote. We cannot change people, but if we are better, stronger, more peaceful, more patient, more compassionate, and more understanding, and taking small steps every day toward the highest and best good, it will often inspire others to do the same. See, it doesn't mean we do nothing for others. We try to create an environment of change, but we try to help them by example. That's what Susan means when she says we're trying to get people a hand up. We're trying to encourage them just a hand out. See, living like Jesus is just not so that we can be a better life, so that other people can discover him and have a better life. And I think it's wonderful we come alongside people because that's our desire, to help people more like Jesus. That's why we follow his teaching. He taught, he inspired, but he also helps us understand the deeper needs of humanity. He was willing to meet people where they were. And I think he fed them, he healed them, he helped the oppressed. And then you know what he said? You can do this too. In fact, you can do it better. Where does it say that? Well, John 14:12. Let me read it for you. Very truly I say to you, whoever follows my teaching will do the works I've been doing, and they will do even greater things than these. Can I pray for you? Father, you're challenging us to become more. You're challenging us to have our eyes open to the possibilities of being better people, being more compassionate, and seeing change not happen in those around us, but seeing change happen in us. We ask that the presence of Christ would be very helpful today and bold today to help us where we are to move to our next step of who we should be. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Would you stand, please? I'm going to tell you a story in closing. And as I do, remind you of a couple things. First of all, if you want to pray, there's always someone up front who would be delighted to pray with you. Secondly, make sure you look through your notes today. The announcements are on the back. But if you want to know more about Suncoast, there is a tour next weekend at 10 o'clock. And that tour takes you behind the scenes and tells you all about Suncoast. Just fill out take the perforated card, put your name with a phone number, email, we'll contact you about it. But next week at 10 o'clock, get on the bus and see the 81 acres. Second thing I think is important, look through the announcements. We're gathering supplies for those who've been devastated by the hurricane. And if you bought stuff, I know you did because I did, and you bought stuff just in case, and you don't know what to do with it, well, let me suggest, bring it to church next weekend. We've got some resources going to be able to fly these supplies to the Bahamas and those areas that are in need. Make sense? So whatever you want to do that, bring it next weekend. We'd appreciate that as well. Look through the announcements, and we'd appreciate you looking through those. So here's a story. It's a story of an overworked mom who went to a meditation retreat. She needed it. And as she got to the retreat, there was a guy sitting near her, and while she's meditating, he's making this annoying clicking sound with his tongue. Again and again, she's jolted out of her meditation attempt because he keeps clicking his tongue. He's behind her. Why is he doing that? Is he just trying to annoy me? Why is he that way? During the break, she was so annoyed, she thought, I'm going to straighten this guy out. She turned around, she walked back toward him, and as she was just about to get up to him, she looked over in the radiator against the wall, which is where the heat comes from, was making that clicking noise. It wasn't him at all. I mean, she was going to give him what for? But she didn't have to. But you know what happened? She was suddenly relieved because it wasn't him. It was some inanimate object. It wasn't about him trying to annoy her or her being annoyed with someone else. It was not about him being rude or selfish. It was simply a radiator. You know, the rest of the day, she had no problem meditating, even with the noise, because it was just the radiator. Now, I want to ask you a question. How many things are driving you crazy because it's someone else? How many times are we angry with others? Maybe the real issue is me not taking it personal when things annoy me. Some things, we just need to let it go and be reminded that life is to be lived. So here's my suggestion. You only have one job, just one job. And we learn it from him. He loves you today. So do I. God bless. Thanks for coming.